Slowing the conversation down is one of the most powerful ways to deal with someone who isn't telling you the truth, because liars thrive in fast and chaotic conversations where no one has time to think. When you pause and take a breath before responding, you signal that you are in control of the pace, not them. You are not rushing to react. You are not rushing to defend. You are just letting their words hang in the air long enough for everyone to notice them. This makes them uncomfortable because they rely on you to quickly accept what they said and move on. Instead, you are taking the power back simply by giving space for the truth to catch up with the conversation. When you calmly repeat back what they just said, it works like holding up a mirror and forcing them to look at themselves. Most liars are confident when they first speak because they are hoping you will not question them. But when you echo their exact words back to them slowly, you are showing that you are paying full attention. This puts them on the spot without you ever accusing them of lying. They now have to either confirm what they said, clarify it, or backtrack. And every one of those options makes it harder for them to keep the lie alive. You are not attacking them. You are simply playing back their own words and letting them hear how they sound. This method works especially well because it removes any excuse for them to get defensive. Instead of you saying you do not believe them, you are just giving them another chance to say it again and see if it makes sense. People who are telling the truth will usually have no problem repeating themselves, sometimes even with more detail, but people who are lying will often stumble or get irritated. They might suddenly change details, shorten their story, or add unnecessary information to try to cover up the gaps. By slowing the moment down, you are giving yourself the opportunity to notice these shifts in real time. The key is to stay calm and not let your emotions take over, because liars are counting on you to get frustrated or defensive so they can turn the attention back on you. When you remain steady, they lose control of the conversation and have to keep performing under the pressure you are creating. The slower the exchange gets, the more uncomfortable it feels for them, because every second that passes gives them more chances to make mistakes. You are creating an environment where the truth has space to breathe and where lies begin to feel out of place. Another advantage of repeating their words is that it makes everyone else listening more aware of what was just said. In group situations, this can be very powerful because now the liar is not just accountable to you, but to everyone in the room. It is no longer your word against theirs. It is their own words being held up for everyone to hear. Even if no one says anything, the pressure builds and they know they are being watched more closely. This subtle form of accountability often forces them to either get more truthful or retreat from the conversation completely. This one simple trick works because it uses their own behavior against them. You are not introducing any new information. You are not making accusations, and you are not escalating the situation. You are simply taking what they gave you and handing it back at a slower pace, which forces them to either commit to it or unravel under the weight of it. The more you practice slowing conversations down and calmly repeating what you hear, the more natural it becomes and the easier it gets to spot when something does not add up. Keeping your tone neutral and your body language still is one of the most disarming things you can do when dealing with someone who is lying, because liars often expect a strong emotional reaction that they can use to distract or control the conversation. When you do not give them that reaction, you take away one of their biggest tools. They cannot feed off your anger, they cannot play the victim if you stay calm, and they cannot twist your emotions into a reason to avoid the truth. Your stillness becomes a kind of power that makes them uncomfortable because they realize they no longer have control over how the conversation is going to go. Neutrality creates a safe space for the truth to reveal itself because it removes the emotional noise from the situation. Instead of the discussion turning into a fight or a shouting match, you are holding steady and allowing the weight of their words to settle on their own. This is incredibly effective because liars count on heightened emotions to confuse the issue and rush past details that do not add up. When you stay composed, you slow everything down and force them to sit with what they said. They now have to work harder to maintain the story because they cannot hide behind your emotional response. Your body language also plays a huge role in this process because your posture can either invite more honesty or make the other person more defensive. If you are crossing your arms, leaning aggressively forward, or rolling your eyes, you might trigger them to dig deeper into their lie just to protect themselves. But if you keep your body open, your face calm, and your tone steady, you remove any excuse they might have to escalate the situation. They cannot accuse you of attacking them because you are clearly not, and that puts all the focus back on what they are saying rather than how you are reacting. One of the most powerful effects of staying neutral is that it makes the liar start to second-guess themselves. They may have expected to manipulate your emotions, but now they are left with nothing but their own words hanging in the air. The longer you maintain that calm energy, the more pressure builds on them because they know you are not distracted. Your silence and stillness feel like a spotlight that keeps getting brighter, forcing them to either double down with more lies or start correcting themselves to relieve the tension. This technique also allows you to observe more carefully because when you are not busy being defensive or angry, you notice things like changes in their breathing, their eye contact, or the way their story shifts with each sentence. You can pick up on small inconsistencies that you might have missed if you were focused on expressing your own emotions. The calmer you stay, the more information you gather, and the easier it is to see where their story does not hold together. It may feel uncomfortable at first to hold this kind of steady, neutral presence because it can feel like you are not doing enough. But in reality, you are doing exactly what needs to be done because you are taking away the chaos that liars depend on. The quiet confidence of staying neutral keeps the power in your hands and forces the other person to reveal themselves. Over time, you will notice that people start telling you more than they planned simply because your calm energy makes them run out of places to hide. Silence is one of the most uncomfortable tools for a liar to face because it leaves them alone with their own words and gives them no place to hide. Most people are used to conversations moving quickly with interruptions, reactions, and back and forth responses. When you stop talking and simply hold the space, you create an awkward pause that feels heavier with every passing second. This pause forces them to think about what they just said, and for someone who is lying, that is not a comfortable place to be. They start to wonder if you believe them, they start to worry about what you are thinking, and that mental pressure often causes them to speak again just to fill the silence. The beauty of silence is that it does not accuse or confront, it just waits. Liars hate waiting because they lose control of the conversation when they are not talking. The quiet moment becomes a mirror that reflects their own dishonesty back at them, and many will try to escape that feeling by offering more information. That is when they slip up. They may add new details that do not match the original story, or they may start to contradict themselves as they scramble to make the lie sound more believable. The longer you can stay silent, the more likely it is that they will talk themselves into a corner. Holding silence also gives you the advantage of observing more than speaking. You can study their facial expressions, their body language, and the way they react to the stillness. Someone who is telling the truth usually has no problem waiting because they have nothing to hide. They can sit in that silence with confidence because their story will not change when they speak again. But a liar often fidgets, looks away, or becomes visibly nervous because they feel like the silence is exposing them. These little cues tell you a lot about what is really happening without you having to say a single word. Another reason this trick works so well is because silence disrupts their rhythm. People who lie often rehearse in their mind how they are going to deliver their story, and they expect you to respond right away so they can keep moving forward. When you do not give them that immediate reaction, you break the flow they were counting on. This makes them more likely to forget details or panic and say too much. The silence forces them to work harder, and the more effort they put into keeping the story together, the more cracks begin to show. Silence can feel uncomfortable for you too at first, but that discomfort is part of what makes it so powerful. Most people rush to fill silence because they feel socially pressured to keep the conversation going. When you resist that urge, you flip the pressure back onto the liar. They now feel like they have to explain themselves more clearly, and the longer they keep talking, the more likely it is that they will reveal something they did not intend to. This is how you gather the truth without even asking more questions. Using silence effectively is about confidence and patience. You do not have to glare. You do not have to look angry. You simply have to stay present and let the quiet do the work. Every second of silence is a reminder that you are not rushing to rescue them from their own words. This creates an environment where the truth has to work its way to the surface because the lie is no longer enough to fill the space. When you practice this skill, you begin to notice how quickly people start revealing themselves when they feel the weight of that quiet moment. Asking short and clear questions is one of the most effective ways to make a liar uncomfortable because it forces them to commit to their story without giving them any extra room to dance around the truth. When you use a simple question like, "What do you mean by that?" or "Can you explain that again?" you put the responsibility back on them to clarify what they said. This is powerful because liars often rely on giving vague answers or adding unnecessary details to confuse you. A short question cuts through all of that noise and keeps the focus on the exact point you need to understand. The key is to keep the questions simple and direct without sounding aggressive, because the goal is not to scare them into shutting down, but to gently lead them toward revealing more than they planned. When you keep your tone calm and curious, you make it harder for them to accuse you of attacking them or being unfair. This kind of questioning invites them to speak, but at the same time, it narrows the space they have to lie. The more they are asked to explain in simple terms, the harder it becomes for them to keep the story straight. This technique works because liars often have a prepared version of what they want to say, but when you ask them to repeat or explain something they did not expect, they have to think on the spot. Thinking on the spot increases the chances of hesitation, nervous laughter, or small contradictions. Those tiny cracks give you a lot of insight into what is really going on. Someone who is telling the truth will usually feel comfortable giving you more detail, but a liar may grow irritated or defensive because they feel trapped by your persistence. Repeating a short question until you get a clear answer is also a way to stay in control of the conversation. Liars sometimes try to distract you by changing the topic or adding extra drama to shift your focus. When you calmly bring the question back to the original point, you send the message that you are not moving forward until the answer makes sense. This pressure is not loud or confrontational, but it is very effective because it forces them to either clarify the truth or risk exposing the lie. Another advantage of short questions is that they make the conversation easier for you to manage. You are not over-explaining or giving away what you already know, which keeps the liar from adjusting their story to fit your expectations. Instead, you are gathering information piece by piece and letting them do most of the talking. The more they talk, the more they reveal, and every time they answer, you get to listen closely for consistency or sudden changes that signal dishonesty. This approach is also useful in keeping your emotions under control because you are focused on listening and asking instead of reacting. You are not giving them the satisfaction of seeing you upset or frustrated. You are simply staying curious and allowing their answers to guide the next question. Over time, you will see that this calm, persistent style of questioning makes it very difficult for lies to survive because every layer you peel back exposes more of what they are trying to hide. Staying curious instead of confrontational is a subtle but powerful way to disarm a liar because curiosity keeps the conversation open while confrontation shuts it down. When you approach the situation with genuine interest, you create a space where they feel like they have to keep talking, which is exactly what you want. Liars rely on people getting angry or emotional because that allows them to shift the focus away from their story and onto the reaction they provoked. Curiosity removes that escape route by focusing entirely on gathering more information. Curiosity also changes the energy of the conversation because it takes away the feeling of an attack. When you ask questions with calm interest, you are not accusing them, you are simply trying to understand. This makes it much harder for them to claim they are being treated unfairly or to play the victim, which is a common tactic liars use to avoid accountability. Instead, they are left with the pressure of having to provide more detail, and the more detail they give, the easier it is to spot when something does not add up. Being curious helps you stay calm and objective because your goal is no longer to catch them in a lie, but to collect information that will reveal the truth on its own. This shift keeps your emotions in check and allows you to observe things you might have missed if you were busy being confrontational. You notice their tone, their timing, their choice of words, and all of the subtle changes that happen as the conversation unfolds. Every new answer gives you more insight, and the more insight you have, the easier it is to see through the performance. Liars hate curiosity because it digs deeper than they are prepared for. They often plan what they are going to say at the surface level, but when you keep asking small questions out of genuine interest, they have to keep creating new details on the spot. The more they improvise, the greater the chance they will contradict themselves. This is where their story begins to unravel because they cannot keep track of everything they have said, and eventually the truth and the lie start to clash. Another advantage of curiosity is that it keeps the tension low, which means the conversation lasts longer. Confrontation usually ends with someone shutting down or walking away, but curiosity encourages the liar to stay engaged. The longer they stay engaged, the more they reveal and the more opportunities you have to notice inconsistencies. Over time, they may even start correcting themselves voluntarily because they feel the need to fill the silence with something more believable. When you practice staying curious, you develop the ability to guide the conversation without forcing it. You are not demanding answers. You are simply inviting them to share more and letting their own words do the work. This approach gives you control without creating unnecessary conflict and allows the truth to surface naturally. The liar is left with the difficult task of keeping up the act while you remain calm and steady, collecting every piece of information they offer.